Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together to welcome our guest of honor, Mr. Gan Kim Yong, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Trade and Industry, the Republic of Singapore. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gan Kim Yong.
I often wonder, how can our global community navigate the complexities of energy transitions to shape a sustainable future for all?
Hi, I'm Kok Keong, Chief Executive of the Energy Market Authority of Singapore. We live in an era of rapid energy transformation. To prevent catastrophic climate change, we must work quickly to decarbonize our energy systems. We also have to speed up the deployment of alternative and renewable energy and change how we transmit and distribute energy.
To achieve a just and inclusive energy transition, the world is striving towards a collective net zero energy future. More efforts are needed to triple renewable energy generation, deploy clean and low-carbon energy technologies, modernize power grids, increase regional interconnections, and enhance access to transition financing.
Asia is at the forefront of this energy transition. We can be the driver of change. But how will Asia meet growing energy demand while addressing climate change?
The answer lies in working together to build a more connected and sustainable energy world. Low-carbon technologies shaping the energy of tomorrow. Advancing regional interconnectivity. The ASEAN power grid can pave the way for a more interconnected, resilient energy future. Hydrogen as an accelerator for a low-carbon transition. The interplay of renewables and natural gas.
Our path to a cleaner future will not be easy. We need all the bold ideas and innovations to power our journey towards net zero.
There is no one-size-fits-all solution. Every nation, every community will require a set of solutions tailored to its unique circumstances. So, what can individuals like you and me do for our future? From regional insights to global solutions, the Singapore International Energy Week brings together leaders and innovators to shape our shared energy transition. Your perspectives at SIEW will shape our shared energy future.
Good morning and welcome to the 17th Singapore International Energy Week. The global energy community has gathered here to discuss how we can build a connected and sustainable energy world. To our global delegates, a warm welcome to Singapore and to SIEW 2024. Since 2008, SIEW has been at the forefront of the energy discourse, catalyzing collaborations and innovations to drive the energy industry forward. We are facing a tremendous energy challenge. Global energy demand is growing. We need to ensure that it continues to be a reliable an affordable supply of energy to meet the demands of industries and communities. At the same time, to address climate change, there is an urgent need to decarbonize our energy systems. The theme for this year's SIEW is a connected and sustainable energy world. A key focus will be on how countries can strengthen the linkages we have between each other, allowing greater exchange of ideas, technologies, and energy across borders, and how such networks and interconnections are increasingly critical to decarbonize our energy systems successfully. Throughout this week, you will hear fresh ideas and unique perspectives from our energy leaders and experts on how we can tackle the energy challenge. We believe that by working together, we can create a resilient, efficient, and sustainable energy future for all. It is now my great honor to invite the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Trade and Industry, His Excellency Mr. Gan Kim Yong, onto the stage to deliver the Singapore Energy Lecture. Please put your hands together to welcome His Excellency DPM, please.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a very warm welcome to the 17th edition of the Singapore International Energy Week. 2024 has been a sobering year that further drives home the impact of climate change. From hurricanes and tropical storms to wildfires and heat waves, the world has been battered by extreme weather events. Unfortunately, this is likely to get worse in the years to come. There is therefore a growing urgency for us to accelerate the pace of decarbonization. Energy transition is at the heart of the shift to a low-carbon future. Today, the production and consumption of energy account for more than 85% of global carbon dioxide emissions. Reducing these emissions will require adjustments to both production and consumption. Production must progressively shift to a cleaner energy mix, while consumption must shift to greater energy efficiency. The pace of these adjustments will depend on our ability to deploy low-carbon technologies at scale. A study by McKinsey identified 12 categories of climate technologies that could potentially reduce more than 90% of total man-made greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 if deployed extensively. Of this, commercially competitive technologies constitute only 10% of the abatement potential presently. These include solar, onshore wind, hydro, and large nuclear plants. An additional 45% will have to come from technologies which require support to be competitive. These include offshore wind, biofuels, and heat pumps. And a further 40% will depend on technologies that have been demonstrated or proven in prototypes but not deployed at scale yet. These include small modular reactors, carbon capture, and e-fuels, which are synthetic fuels made from renewable energy. We must therefore press ahead on three fronts. First, accelerate the deployment of low-carbon solutions that are commercially mature. Second, invest in the commercialization of solutions that are technologically feasible. And third, to drive further research and development into technologies that are less mature. While Singapore is small and contribute only 0.1% of global emissions, we will do our part to transition to a low-carbon future. We will peak our emission before 2030 and achieve net zero by 2050. This will not be easy, given our limited land surface for solar deployment and the lack of wind or hydroelectric powers. Let me outline our approaches to navigate the energy transition along three dimensions: resilience, reliability, and responsiveness. I will start with resilience. This is at the heart of our 4 switches approach: natural gas, solar power, energy imports, and low-carbon alternatives. Over the years, we have made good progress on each of these switches. Let me start with solar. We are scaling up our solar deployment as much as we can because this is our most viable source of renewable energy domestically. 5 years ago, we announced at SIEW that we would increase our installed solar energy to at least 2 gigawatt peak by 2030. At that time, the total installed solar capacity stood at a modest 260 megawatt peak. We have since achieved an installed solar capacity of 1.35 gigawatt peak, a 5-fold increase from 2019. This puts us on track to meeting our solar deployment target of at least 2 gigawatt peak by 2030. At the same time, we will need to step up the deployment of energy storage systems to manage solar intermittency. Last year, we commissioned a battery energy storage system on Jurong Island, which allows us to counteract sharp and unexpected drop in solar energy. EMA and Sembcorp are in discussion to expand the system and increase the land use density in tandem. Let me move on to the second switch, low-carbon electricity imports. In 2021, I announced our plans to import up to 4 gigawatt of low-carbon electricity by 2035. Last month, we announced that we would raise the target to around 6 gigawatts by 2035, or around 1/3 of our total energy needs. We have made some progress towards this target. We have issued conditional licenses to 5 projects from Indonesia to import a total of 2 gigawatt of low-carbon electricity to Singapore. We have also issued conditional approvals for 4 other projects to import an additional 3.6 gigawatts of low-carbon electricity from Cambodia, Indonesia, and Vietnam. In the meantime, we have kick-started cross-border electricity trading with Malaysia. Last month, we doubled the capacity of electricity traded under the Lao PDR Thailand Malaysia Singapore Power Integration Project to 200 megawatts. In time, these efforts will deepen energy integration and support the advancement of the ASEAN power grid. Minister Tan See Leng will share more at the Asia Clean Energy Summit tomorrow morning. Let me move on to low-carbon alternatives. 2 years ago, we unveiled our national hydrogen strategy, outlining our commitment to research, pilot, and collaborate on the use of hydrogen. Since then, we have made progress on several fronts. Last year, we invited a number of consortia to participate in the request for proposal for a pilot project on Jurong Island to explore the use of low-carbon ammonia for power generation and maritime bunkering. We have since shortlisted 2 consortia. They will commence preliminary front-end engineering design studies by the end of this year. This pilot will allow us to gain valuable experience in managing low-carbon ammonia supply chains. We must also drive further research and development into safe, efficient use of hydrogen. We had launched the Low Carbon Energy Research, or LCERF, funding initiative and allocated over $180 million since 2020 to support the research into low-carbon energy technologies, including hydrogen. Earlier this year, we launched the Center for Hydrogen Innovation at the National University of Singapore. The center, which is first of its kind in Southeast Asia, will collaborate with industry to advance hydrogen research across the entire value chain. This will support our efforts to raise the readiness of hydrogen technologies and the market. I said last year that we are carefully studying nuclear energy. Recent developments have demonstrated the importance of staying abreast of this field. Major technology companies such as Amazon and Google have announced sizable deals with small reactors developers to meet their increasing need for low-carbon energy. We are keeping a close watch and have taken 2 steps this year to build up our capabilities. We signed a civil nuclear cooperation agreement with the United States, otherwise known as the 123 Agreement. This agreement will enable us to deepen cooperation with the US on advanced nuclear energy technologies, including small nuclear reactors. It will also allow us to collaborate with other countries that use nuclear energy technologies and designs containing components or intellectual property of US origin. As part of our capability building efforts, we are aiming to build up a pool of about 100 nuclear safety experts in the medium to long run. We have ongoing studies to assess the potential of other promising low-carbon energy sources, such as geothermal energy and biofuels, to meet Singapore's electricity needs in future. Even as we deploy more solar power, push for the imports of low-carbon electricity, and develop alternative energy, we will continue to need natural gas during the energy transition. That said, we have to explore pathways to decarbonize natural gas, such as carbon capture. To this end, EMA will be releasing a grant call for carbon capture and storage feasibility studies for the power sector. These studies would allow us to better understand the cost and infrastructure requirements for capturing the emissions from our combined cycle gas turbines. I have described at some length our efforts to build resilience through our 4 street switches. And as we navigate towards a cleaner energy future, we must ensure an orderly transition. And this brings me to the next dimension: reliability. Natural gas will continue to play a crucial role in safeguarding our energy security. We must therefore ensure we have a stable and secure supply of natural gas. At last year's SIEW, I shared that Singapore will set up a central gas entity, or GasCo, to centralize the procurement and supply of gas to the power sector. This approach will enable us to negotiate more favorable gas contracting terms, enter into long-term gas contracts for more stable prices and supply, and diversify our gas supply sources to reduce concentration risk. We will set up GasCo as a fully government-owned company by the end of this financial year. In tandem, we must also enhance our infrastructure to support the import of natural gas. Last year, Prime Minister Lawrence Wong announced SLNG's plans to develop a second LNG terminal to meet the growing demand of natural gas. I am pleased to share that SLNG will develop the second LNG terminal at Jurong Port as an offshore terminal, which will include a new floating storage and regasification unit. The new terminal will have 5 million tons per annum of throughput capacity, a 50% increase of our existing LNG capacity. I look forward to the launch of the second LNG terminal project during SIEW. Thus far, I have spoken about our moves to ensure a clean and reliable energy supply, but there is another critical aspect of our energy system which we must not overlook: our electricity grid. Grids play a critical role in the distribution of energy. In some countries, economic growth plans or decarbonization plans have been hampered because electricity cannot be transported from where it is produced to where it is needed. We must therefore continue to prioritize timely grid connections, improve the responsiveness of grid capacity to demand signals, and develop new grid capabilities for a heterogeneous energy mix. First, on energy grid connections. We recognize that timely infrastructure connection is important to our companies. Singapore today is more developed than before, with less greenfield sites available, and this may affect infrastructure development timelines. We are reviewing our investments in grid connections so that companies can continue to enjoy timely access to power. Second, we want to enhance the responsiveness of our grid to demand changes. Demand management measures offer several benefits. By nudging consumers to shift to off-peak periods, we avoid running more expensive power generation units during peak hours, and thus save costs at the system level. In the long run, this will help us reduce investments in units that are largely required just to meet peak demand. This will also improve system stability and reliability by relieving stress on the grid during high demand periods and unplanned outages. EMA has been administering a demand response program that incentivizes consumers to reduce their electricity consumption during periods of high demand. EMA will expand the demand response program to include two new groups of consumers. One, businesses with behind-the-meter battery energy storage system, or BESS, will be allowed to participate in the program. Such businesses can use their batteries to shift their electricity consumption from peak to non-peak periods. They are in a good position to benefit from demand response program. Two, we will extend the demand response program to EV charging systems under a pilot. EV charging operators will be motivated to adjust their charging needs in response to demand on the grid. This will enhance our ability to balance demand and supply in the electricity grid. EMA has signed a memorandum of understanding with Comfort Delgro to collaborate on this pilot via a regulatory sandbox. We welcome more EV charging operators to join us in this effort. This brings me to my final point on the grid. We will enhance our grid infrastructure so that it will be more responsive to changes in supply and demand. We need to prepare our grid to integrate distributed energy sources such as rooftop solar panels and energy storage systems. It may not be commercially viable for each device to individually provide services to the grid, but they can be aggregated to operate as a single coordinated unit providing energy and ancillary services. This concept is known as virtual power plant. To advance this concept, EMA will launch an industry consultation and request for proposal to pilot VPPs via a regulatory sandbox. EMA will also collaborate with the SP Group to validate the potential of VPPs as a reliable generation source for the grid. We will need to prepare our grid for rising peak demand, even as we try to manage this through demand response programs. In response to these challenges, EMA, in collaboration with the SP Group, will launch the Future Grid Capabilities Roadmap later this year. This roadmap will outline strategies to harness distributed energy resources for enhanced grid stability, improve grid management, and address emerging system needs like inertia management. The task ahead to transform the global energy system is monumental. Singapore may be small, but we stand ready to play our part in the energy transition. To increase the sustainability of our power supply, we will need to develop and study every possible decarbonization pathway while safeguarding our energy security and ensuring cost competitiveness. But we cannot do it alone. International collaboration is critical. In this spirit, I'm delighted to officiate today the opening of the International Energy Agency's first regional cooperation center outside its Paris headquarters, here in Singapore. This is the first energy-focused international organization that Singapore is hosting. The center will serve as a hub for IEA's engagements in Southeast Asia and beyond. Such partnerships are especially pertinent given this year's theme of SIEW, a connected and sustainable energy world. In the weeks ahead, let us strengthen our partnerships and shape a sustainable energy future together. May our conversations be bold, our ideas innovative, and our collaborations fruitful. Thank you.
Deputy Prime Minister Gan, thank you very much, sir, for your sharing and your insights. Thank you, sir. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to a very special highlight of today's program, where we're about to witness the launch of the IEA Regional Cooperation Center right here in Singapore. Now, to start this segment, I now invite Dr. Fateh Birol, Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, to deliver his remarks for this opening ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Birol.
Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, ministers, ambassadors, dear guests, very good morning to all of you. Dear colleagues, dear friends, as Mr. Deputy Prime Minister mentioned a few minutes ago, we are here today to mark an historic occasion. Today, after 50 years of the foundation of the International Energy Agency, we are proud to inaugurate our first office outside of Paris, where our headquarters are. And this office will be here in Singapore to focus on Southeast Asia. As such, I believe it represents a major step forward for the international energy governance. Dear colleagues, since we have been working on this issue, I received 2 regular questions, including this morning. Why did the IEA choose Southeast Asia to focus on in its first office outside of Paris headquarters? Why Southeast Asia? And the second question is, why Singapore? So I would like to try to answer these 2 questions. But if I may, first, a few words about how IEA got to this point. Ministers, ambassadors, dear colleagues, IEA was founded 50 years ago. This is our birthday, in fact, this year, as a response to the first oil shock in 1974. And the main task of the IEA was to deal with oil security issues, and the members of the IEA were advanced economies in North America, Europe, and Asia. It continued like this. In the year 2015, we had our first ever modernization program. And this modernization program had 3 dimensions. Number 1, we broadened our energy security definition. Oil security, important, will be important, but in addition to that, IEA increases activities for gas security, electricity security, security of critical minerals, and clean energy supply chains. This is the first one, broadening our energy security. Second, IEA was a leader to analyze, provide recommendations on traditional fuels such as oil, gas, and coal. We have accelerated our efforts for clean energy technologies such as solar, such as wind, electric cars, such as sustainable financing, hydrogen, small modular reactors, becoming an all fuels, all technologies organization. Dear colleagues, in today's world, you cannot understand one single technology's current and future position without looking at the entire energy picture. If you want to understand renewables, you have to understand what's happening in coal or natural gas or nuclear power. If you want to understand the oil markets, you have to have a good understanding of electric cars and transportation sector. So it is the reason we made this move, and this is the second one. Third dimension of our modernization was opening the doors of the IEA to emerging world. If we wanted to deserve our name, International Energy Agency, we had to open our doors to emerging world. In 2015, right after Mexico joined the International Energy Agency, and we had now 13 associate members, including Brazil, China, India, South Africa, Egypt, but also in this region, Thailand, Indonesia, and Singapore. So this is the IES opening the doors, brought us here. Now, why Southeast Asia? The first question. If I may, dear colleagues, I would like to bring you to a modest dinner in the year 2009 of two gentlemen, 2009. At a modest restaurant, a modest meal, but a very friendly meal. And in this dinner, the Singaporean gentleman made me understand, made the other colleague understand how important the Southeast Asia is and will be. I'm a man of numbers. I look at the numbers, and he was right. Of these two men, one of them was the chief economist of the International Energy Agency in 2009, and the other one was the head of the EMA, the powerful energy market authority of Singapore. Now, that chief economist made some steps in his career and became the executive director of the IEA, who is me, by the way. But the other one who deserves in fact, more applause is the head of the EMA, today's Prime Minister, Lawrence Wong. I really thank him very much from here for his vision, a great vision, and being a wonderful friend many years. And we were so happy at the IEA that only a few days before he is officially appointed as the Prime Minister, he visited us at the IEA, and I am very happy that I will meet him soon to extend our gratitude. Dear colleagues, since then, we made several outlooks. Where does the Southeast Asia, the region, go? And the final one we are releasing tomorrow, and I will give you a couple of insights how important this region is for all of us to understand. In terms of economy, only in 5-6 years of time, Southeast Asia, this region, will become one of the 5 top economies of the world. In terms of population, again in around 2030, this region will reach about 750, almost 750 million people. Huge population, huge market. In terms of energy, again in the next 10 years, more than 25%, 1/4 of the global energy demand growth set to come from this region. Only second to India in terms of its weight in the global energy sector. So as such, the region cements its weight in the global energy issues. So it is the reason we thought we focus on this very region. Region is very important in terms of oil and gas consumption, and therefore their security, their prices are very important, because many countries' economy looks at the oil and gas import bills and how they affect their economies. Security is very important. About 2/3 of the oil and gas in this region goes through the Malacca Strait, a very narrow strait. But this region is also very important in terms of, as Deputy Prime Minister mentioned, moving in the clean energy direction. Solar. This year, we expect the solar capacity in this region reaches about 40 gigawatts, 10 times increase compared to a few years ago. And not only in terms of installing, but in a few countries, such as Vietnam, such as Malaysia, Thailand, they are real good manufacturers of solar panels. In terms of electric cars, strong growth. Many countries, again, Deputy Prime Minister mentioned, Thailand, one of the countries where we see also the manufacturing of electric cars. And in terms of the critical minerals, which are very important for clean energy transition, we see that the countries like Indonesia, Philippines having a lot of nickel, and many countries have tin, bauxite, and rare earth materials. So the region, also from a clean energy transition point of view, is a very important one and most dynamic one in the world. So as such, I believe what the head of the EMA said was completely right. It was very important to keep an eye on this region. So therefore, we have been working with all these 10 countries in the region from Paris, but there is no substitute to be on the ground. So it is the reason we are focusing on Southeast Asia and opening an office in the region. So my last point is on why did we choose Singapore in the region? We consider the question, our member countries, very closely. There could have been many other good locations, good cities to host our center. And unfortunately, we could only choose one. And Singapore sits at the heart of Southeast Asia. And it's a meeting point for international and business activities, and the regional hub for sustainable financing and innovation. And it represents a strategic location that one can have access to other Southeast Asian countries, policymakers, and governments. And all of these reasons, plus the decades of excellent relationship between the Singapore governments and the IEA, we came to the strategic choice of opening our office in Singapore. Here, I would like to thank very much the Singaporean government for the great support, especially in the last 2 years, for opening this very center. My special thanks go to Minister Tan. Thank you very much, Minister Tan. Every single day, including weekends, mornings, evenings, your evening is my morning, and vice versa. Thank you very much for being there and to fix the problems. I understood Mr. Tan has a nickname called Mr. Fixer. Thank you very much for fixing this problem as well. And this was some time ago. some time ago, I didn't know there are so many legal procedure issues, and Mr. Tan was excellent to address this issue. Thank you very much to you and to your colleagues, Minister Tan. So many thanks to members of the International Energy Agency governments to help us to make a major step forward to be an international, truly international agency for all fuels, for all technologies. And finally, to our partners in the region, we are now also physically here. We are ready to create an energy future for this region, which is prosperous, secure, and sustainable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Birol. We invite you to remain on stage, sir, just for the next segment. Thank you, sir. Always good to hear from you, Dr. Birol. Now, many will ask, where was that intimate, modest dinner you had in Singapore back in the day? Many will ask thereafter. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the Singapore IEA Regional Cooperation Center proudly marks a significant milestone for both Singapore and the International Energy Agency, or IEA. The Singapore IEA Regional Cooperation Center speaks to the power of partnership and, of course, collaboration as we bring our collective commitment to work together to solve the energy challenges so as to foster a connected and sustainable energy world. This is the first IEA Regional Cooperation Center outside of Paris, as you've heard several times this morning. This new center will work with all countries in Southeast Asia and, of course, beyond to enhance energy and security and accelerate energy transitions, and will provide policy guidance, technical assistance, and training and capacity building. Now, it is with great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, that I invite to join us on stage for this very special occasion, back again, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Trade and Industry, Republic of Singapore. Once again, Mr. Gan Kim Yong, please, a round of applause. Dr. Tan See Leng, Minister for Manpower and Second Minister for Trade and Industry, Republic of Singapore. Dr. Anders Hoffman, Chair of the IEA Governing Board. And Ms. Ursula Borak, Chair of the IEA Standing Group on Global Energy Dialogue. Let's give them all a round of applause, please. Very special moment indeed. Now, like everyone's in position, at my count of 3, I will invite you to place your right hands on the SGIEA logo. At my count of 3. Now, looks like everyone's ready. 1, 2, and 3. Congratulations on the launch of the Singapore IEA Regional Cooperation Center. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are. All right, may I invite our dignitaries to stand a little closer as we have a photograph taken with the lions, a traditional welcome and a celebration right here in Singapore. Okay, just a little closer. There we are. Okay. One for the cameras. Dignitaries remain on stage. Lions, thank you. Thank you very much, Lions. Okay. We will have... Right, we'll have another photograph taken just with our VIPs. Right over there. A little closer. Okay, just a little closer. There we are. Very nice. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We invite you now to make your way to your seats. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, a very special moment for IEA and Singapore right here. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll pause for just a couple of minutes to prepare the stage for our next session. Now, while we do so, I'd like to take this moment to express our sincere gratitude to our sponsors who have made this event possible. Now, your support is invaluable in driving the conversations that shape our energy future. In support of sustainability right here at SIEW, we are proud to announce that renewable energy certificates for SIEW 2024 will be provided by Geneco. Go Net Zero is offsetting the travel emissions of SIEW VIPs. We thank these organizations for their contributions. Now, once again, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very warm welcome to the 17th Singapore Energy Week. My name is Ravi Nadesan, and of course, I'm very happy and proud to be the MC through the entire week. Now, you will hear, as mentioned several times before this morning, fresh ideas and unique perspectives from our speakers and, of course, our experts on how we can tackle our energy challenges. Just so you are with us through the entire space as we have our conversations and for us to connect and engage with you, we'd like to ensure that all of our panel discussions are managed for you to have your questions posted through the QR code. You'll see this QR code right here. If you haven't already done so, please use this QR code to jump onto the bandwagon where we will give you all the questions right then. You can post your questions right in there as well. And of course, to help you navigate through the entire week, please log on to www.siew.sg where you will access the following: the program across the week, SIEW live blog, SIEWcast, and sponsors and partners listing. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special message from the Honorable Jennifer M. Granholm, Secretary, United States Department of Energy. Her Excellency, please.
Hello, everyone. Happy Singapore International Energy Week. I sure wish I could join you in person as you celebrate the close partnership between the United States and Singapore and all of Southeast Asia on climate and clean energy. Together, we just have enormous power to drive responsible energy transitions, balancing economic development with environmental sustainability. This effort is fueled by information sharing, discussing our triumphs, challenges, and ideas so that we can learn from one another. So the U.S. Department of Energy's Net Zero World program is just a prime example of this strategy in action. Together with a select group of partner countries like Singapore, we're charting pathways to net zero energy systems. We're identifying technology solutions to clean energy challenges. We're developing clean industrial bases that will help mobilize billions in investments. We're supporting clean battery supply chains in Indonesia, grid battery energy storage systems in Thailand, regional interconnection with Singapore. Through the Initiative on Competitive Renewable Energy Zones, we're working with the Philippines to unlock their significant offshore wind potential. Under the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, we're engaging regional partners on a host of clean energy priorities, from hydrogen to carbon markets to emerging technologies like SMRs, small modular reactors. In collaboration with ASEAN, we've established a ministerial-level dialogue on energy, which has helped us launch new resources like the Climate Solutions Hub. And last but not least, we've been honored to work on the successful campaign to create the first International Energy Agency regional hub in Singapore. And we've been inspired by the leadership of Minister Tan and his team in bringing it home. And it'll support all regional Southeast Asia energy efforts. The challenge before us is immense, but also presents an incredible opportunity. Together, we can leverage this historic transition into a century of growth and prosperity for all of our economies. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Her Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure now to introduce our next segment, the SIEW Ministerial Dialogue. Joining us for this dialogue, I take pride in inviting the Honorable Dr. Doto Mashaka Biteko, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Energy, United Republic of Tanzania, His Excellency Keo Rotanak, Minister of Mines and Energy, Kingdom of Cambodia, the Honorable Shane Jones, Minister for Resources, Associate Minister for Energy, New Zealand. Moderating this session will be Ms. Rachel Kelly, International Sustainability and Climate Correspondent. Ladies and gentlemen, as they make their way up, let's welcome them with a round of applause, shall we? Now again, a gentle reminder to ensure that you are already on the bandwagon through the QR code. Now, Rachel, I'm going to hand over the floor to you. Ladies and gentlemen, our ministerial dialogue.
Thank you very much. Good morning, distinguished guests, ministers. It's a pleasure to be with you all today for Singapore International Energy Week, and a privilege to be moderating such an esteemed panel. Now, the title of this year's ministerial dialogue is A Connected and Sustainable Energy World. But as we know, balancing the energy transition with the energy demand can be a delicate task. And today, for the panel session, we are going to discuss the challenges and opportunities, projects in the pipeline, policy, as well as financing. To start off today's panel, our distinguished guests need no further introduction, and I'd like to start by asking what you deem as a national priority when it comes to energy, the transition, and the demands of your population. Deputy Prime Minister, perhaps I can start by asking you first.
Thank you so much, moderator. And before I continue, let me first begin by thanking the organizers for this event, and indeed for the Singapore government for the extension of invitation to us to join this wonderful event which is happening here. We take this event as a moment where we can also share experience and learn from each other and see what we can do to address issues related to energy back home. Now, to your question, the power sector, or rather the energy sector in the country, is really growing, because the energy sector is the cornerstone of the development, which without it, the development is really limited. Having that in mind, the country has done a lot of initiatives just to address the matter, the question of electricity demand in the country, which is growing at a tune of 10 to 15% every year. And therefore, the call for investment is really demanded in the country, where we are developing a number of new projects, the hydro, the natural gas, and some renewables like solar and wind. And we are happy that we have discovered the geothermal, which is quite big discovery, which has a potential of generating close to 2,000 megawatts, and which we are looking at it as a new step to develop. And we're busy looking for the financing, which is really a question as you have asked. So the country is doing very well, and recently we have commissioned a bigger mega project, which is the hydropower project, which is called Julius Nyerere, of 2,115 megawatts, which has really turned the narrative of the energy mix and has made the energy mix in the country of 51% coming from the hydro. So this is the thing that we're working together with the development partners and investors to see if we can accelerate and bring this project in the pipeline. So we have many, many other projects which are underway, under construction, and some are at the initial stage of feasibility study. So we're looking forward to get some private sectors also to be involved to develop those projects.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. And Minister Rotanak, for Cambodia, what would you deem as the most critical energy priority at the moment?
Thank you. I join the Deputy Prime Minister for thank you to Ms. DPM Gan, Mr. Tan, and panelists here. Our history prior to 1998 was more than 500 years. Our history was dotted with instability, with wars and conflict. So immediately after 1998, after we achieved peace and stability and national reconciliation, our first task was to make sure that we started real development work in earnest, and one of which is electricity. So we spent the last 20 years trying to have universal coverage, so that's our immediate priority. So today, we are happy to see that 99% of our villages electrified. And so we have to spend, going forward, making sure that the last mile to cover all households and villages will be a top priority. Along this line, our transition has been from 100% dependency on diesel and heavy fuel oil to now 62% renewable energy today. And today's hydropower represents about 40%. But this is going to change because our target for 2030, which is our first stop to a net zero by 2050, is going to have something like 45% hydro and wind. Sorry, hydro to be replaced by solar and wind to make up about 45% by 2030. So make sure that we have at least 70% renewable by 2030. And we want to do that with a more resilient grid, and we want to do that energy transition with an inclusive approach that women, young people will be integrated to our development process so that no one's going to be left behind. And that is what we're going to do.
Thank you very much. And Minister Jones for New Zealand.
Yeah, first, can I acknowledge the hosts? What an extraordinary facility where you're able to organise such globally leading events. Thank you for hosting us, and to my fellow panellists. The challenge for New Zealand is that we are predominantly the beneficiaries of what our forefathers did in terms of developing hydroelectricity, geothermal electricity, and now we're on the journey of climate change net zero. How to fund and manage that transition so it does not cause deindustrialization. For a small, distant, open trading economy like New Zealand that cannot rely on neighbours to export energy through a pipe, we are focused absolutely on energy security and diversifying the sources of where we generate our electricity. Our gas supplies have dwindled. It is increasingly difficult in a lot of Western nations to find the social license to create large hydro investments. Therefore, our government is now turning its attention to the extremely large resource we have, known as supercritical deep-seated geothermal energy. And although it's become fashionable to say less than pleasant things about the oil and gas industry, in my country we still need them, not the least of which is they have the technology to drill down 7, 8, 9 kilometres and help our economy track into a very clean, green, infinite source of energy, deep-seated critical geothermal energy.
And in that regard, when it comes to developing projects and balancing transition energies and oil and gas energies, it's, as you mentioned, it's not always a straight and narrow path. It can be a difficult balance. And in New Zealand, I understand currently around 80% of your energy currently comes from renewables. Are you still on track towards your renewable energy goals for 2030 at 100%? And how do you see these projects balancing and the timelines needed to roll these projects out?
Well, you ask a very good question. You're extremely shrewd in your questioning. We, like a lot of other small open trading nations, must take our public with us, but more importantly, give international investors the incentive to continue to invest in such a small, highly lucrative food-producing nation, but a distant nation. And the focus is on ensuring that energy security is uppermost. In the event we cannot secure ongoing energy transmission for industrial and household purposes, it tends to lead to the untimely demise of the politicians, and I hope not to be that politician.
And speaking of new projects rolling out, and when it comes to finance, I understand recent announcements regarding new projects in Cambodia. 23 newly approved energy projects for the power projects that have been approved from this year all the way until 2029. When it comes to financing such projects, obviously, when it comes to the private sector, they want to know what their ROI might be. What are some of the challenges when it comes to financing these projects, and how have you overcome them?
Thank you. I just want to go back a little bit over the energy transition. When we look at energy transition, it's just like building a bridge across a constantly changing or shifting river. Because we have so fast development in terms of the technology advances, but also we have rising demand and also the market fluctuation, and not least exacerbated by the geopolitical issues that we see today. So we are always short of funds, but we also have a big target to achieve, which is, for example, in the case of Cambodia, we want to have at least 70% renewable by 2030. That is the challenge. But the good news is that if you look at the IEA report, it is said that the global energy investment is, for the first time, is set to exceed more than $3 trillion this year. Two-thirds, $2 trillion going to renewable energy technology and infrastructure. That's the good news for the first time. Cambodia, as I've made the first step, $5.7 billion investment approved by the cabinet this year is basically supplement what we have invested already in the last few years. So we have 2,000 plus megawatt of solar, 900 wind project. We have 1,000 megawatt pump storage hydro to be topped up with a few conventional hydro. So this is an opportunity to bring in new investment from the international community. And the government is not going to invest in this generation project, but for private sector. I think one of the successes we have received is that because of the enabling environment, because of the de-risking mechanism we put in place, we don't have problem attracting private funding for this project. We believe that we are on track to the 70%. But if any lesson to be learned, it is about de-risking the investment climate inside the country. And we believe that we are doing quite well for that. Yeah.
And providing a guarantee, perhaps?
Yeah, one of the things that we put in place is to provide sovereign guarantee so that the investment community will be more confident in the way they put money into Cambodia. Because we are a small country, still developing economy, there is a fair perception in terms of political risk of Cambodia. So by providing sovereign guarantee, it helps raising confidence by the international financial institutions. So that's one of the reasons we put that in place. And I think it works very well for Cambodia for that.
And Deputy Prime Minister, you recently announced funds that you're targeting to raise $190 billion to improve the energy situation in Africa and Tanzania as well. Perhaps you can share with us the importance of international collaboration in one, raising funds and also pushing forward these projects.
Thank you so much. The financing which we're talking about covers the three levels of the supply chain of energy, ranging from generation, transmission, and distribution. So having power being generated doesn't have any meaning if it is not transmitted to the users. Then this requires a lot of money and time also, because the projects which are related to energy are both capital intensive and time intensive. So the growth is bigger, it's growing rapidly, the country, the urbanization, where you need people be powered. And again, on the other side, you need to put money to generate electricity and get them connected. Now, the amount of money that is required to develop these projects is really coming from the development partners and mainly the private sector. And again, we are keeping our eyes open on the PP model of financing. Otherwise, what my brother from Cambodia has said, the guarantee which is really required sometimes is troublesome. Some would require sovereign guarantees, some would require guarantees which really it's risky to the country. So we are trying so hard to invite investors who are really ready to join our hands and develop these projects, because we are sure the market is there, the demand is there. Tanzania being a member of Eastern African Power Pool and the SADC Power Pool, we have a bigger market where whenever we have access of electricity, we can sell to our neighboring countries. We have some interconnectors with our neighbors, Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya, and now we are putting up an interconnector with Zambia, which will be helping us to assist our neighbor Zambia, who is facing a deadly drought, and that is also going to be the market. So the question of the market is there. It's really guaranteed, and we really invite whoever wish to come and join with us, develop these projects, do so, because this is an opportunity. Yeah.
And we talk about energy use. Yeah. It differs across countries, regions, and I understand there's a project that you're particularly passionate about in Tanzania, which is the Clean Cooking Project, which is something perhaps that we don't often think about when it comes to energy security here in Singapore. Perhaps you could share more with us about the clean cooking push that you have in Tanzania.
Thank you so much for bringing me to that. The clean cooking agenda in the country is a result of a research which was undertaken. The country is facing a really challenge where the energy for cooking is just the traditional energy, which is charcoal and firewood. 90% of the population use charcoal and firewood. Now we want to shift this narrative, and we want them to be at 80% using clean cooking because of, first of all, to preserve our environment, because the deforestation is very big, because people need to cut down trees to make firewood and charcoal so that they can access energy for cooking. And again, health-wise, because people are getting infected by respiratory diseases due to the traditional fuel. So the country inaugurated a strategy which is really intending to change the narrative by providing affordable and access energy for the cooking. We have been doing that, targeting in the next 10 years, we need to shift our entire population to clean cooking. Number one, putting up affordable and less cost energy to the population so that they can shift from the traditional ways of energy. And again, to invite other investors also to venture into it because, again, the market is there, the demand is there. And just also to change the narrative, because people would believe if you don't use this traditional energy for cooking, maybe the way you cook it is really difficult. But again, it's something we need to put up as an agenda as a country.
And that's an important point. When it comes to the energy transition, its cost, we've spoken about financing, but the cost to consumer, Minister Jones, perhaps we can talk about the cost to consumer along when it comes to transition energy and
Yeah, so in New Zealand, per kilowatt hour, we're probably similar to Singapore, US 21, 22 cents. And let's be very honest here. As we move forward, you have to take the public with you. Because if the public feel that they can't see the upside of the medium to long-term climate positive outcomes and they're suffering disproportionately on the journey through, it leads to political mayhem. Some countries like ours, we do have energy payments during the winter period. But the real challenge is how do we rapidly increase supply without destroying the investment envelope that the private financiers need. And I guess I'd give a message from New Zealand, although we're exploring and we're keen to increase what is already a handsome proportion of clean green energy in our small economy, at all times it's incredibly important to take the public with you, given that at the end of the day, they have to believe that what you're doing is enhancing their lives, not only in 20 years' time, but right now. And that's probably, as Resources Minister, one of the greatest challenges that I see is ensuring that the information is clear, the price path is not too onerous, and there's a lot of transparency as to the trade-offs that politicians need to make. Reliance on gas during the transition, just tell the people the truth. As we move towards more solar, in our case, hopefully geothermal, wind, New Zealand in our DNA, or certainly my generation, we are not proponents of the reliance upon nuclear. That may come in the future for another generation of New Zealanders. So social license, political acceptability, and maintaining an investment envelope where people will not be frightened off in terms of putting money into your country.
And Minister Rothenach, from the cost perspective to consumer, perhaps you can share with us your take on that, but also perhaps the impact projects such as the ASEAN Power Grid will have on bringing cost to consumer down.
Yep, we believe that energy costs underpin economic development, and by extension, if we share the economic benefit properly in the transition, we have a coalition that we need to transform our energy system. I certainly like to join Honourable Minister for saying that the cost is important. And given the technology we know today, the transition to a cleaner path is likely to raise costs, given what we know today. Whether I want to say that out loud or not, I think is a matter of decision for each country. But left to each individual country, for example, in the case of ASEAN, the transition toward the net zero by 2050 in general will be very costly, or it's going to take a long time. But if we work together, like through the ASEAN Power Grid, that Singapore and Cambodia teaming up very well, along with a few other nations in ASEAN, and hopefully all in the future, we believe that critical pathway is going to help us to the transition less costly and more inclusive. Because we have resources which are not evenly distributed across nations. The only way to catalyze on that is to be able to be connected. And we are working with the rest of the ASEAN member states to make sure that happens. So in the recent meeting in Vientiane, Minister Tan Sri Leng and I worked very hard along with the Philippines and others to make sure that the ASEAN Center for Energy, for example, will come up with a set of recommendations in the next 3 months, so that by the time that Malaysia holds the next meeting in Kuala Lumpur or elsewhere in Malaysia, we'll have a serious set of recommendations to act on in terms of the pushing for the ASEAN Power Grid. Now, according to the World Bank and ADB, ASEAN can save up to at least $800 billion just by connecting ourselves together, just by sharing. Imagine what it would mean and how it would mean to ASEAN in our journey to net zero by 2050. Now, Cambodia is experiencing that firsthand. While we are saying that we can move our own energy target to at least 70% renewable by 2030, we want to emphasize on cost, because if we don't bring costs down, we may lose the public support.
Yeah.
And therefore, it will just make the whole thing go away. I think two things are important: cost and the inclusiveness of our transition. We want to make sure that young people, that women benefit from our transition. We want to make sure that ethnic minority benefit from the transition. And we have to make sure that the cost is not going to creep up. So in our recent negotiation with the IPPs, for example, in solar energy, we believe that we got the best deal. We got 3.8 cents per kilowatt hour to our national grid. I think this is one of the lowest in the region. And by doing that, we believe that we can hold the coalition, the social coalition, intact. And by putting in place a requirement into our power purchase agreement with IPP that at least 60% of women are employed during the installation of the solar panel, for example, and at least one woman representation at the board level, at the management level, we believe that this is going to work well in terms of inclusiveness going forward. That is what we're going to do.
And just one very last question. I'm conscious of time. You mentioned the ASEAN Power Grid, and we've spoken about the importance of international collaboration. Now, the ASEAN Power Grid is not new. Do you think we're going to see the needle move significantly?
I have been encouraged by the outcome, the latest outcome in Vientiane in Laos recently. First from the Minister of Energy themselves, but also from our top leaders when they just met in Vientiane. So we are going to accelerate that pace, and we are continuing to engage stakeholders and partners, not only within the region, but also from outside the region. We have the World Bank, ADB, invited for the first time to the ASEAN Minister of Energy meeting, for example. That is unprecedented. And we see interest and support from Australia, from Japan, from the United States, and other friends and allies. So we believe that we are going to see something down the road. We're not going to waste another 30 years on the concept, but we're trying to focus on how to actually deliver on the concept note that our leaders have left us with, say, from more than 20 years ago.
Thank you, Minister. And just to round up, perhaps I could ask each of my esteemed panelists to share with us one word on what they think could accelerate international cooperation when it comes to a sustainable energy future, starting with you, Deputy Prime Minister.
One thing which is very important is that governments cannot do everything by themselves. They all depend on private sector to cooperate together to realize the goals that they set for their people. Tanzania, particularly, we invite private sector in our initiative to make sure that the energy supply to the country is the key for the development, and again, we improve the livelihood of our people by using energy sector. Thank you.
Minister Jones, your thoughts on one word to accelerate international.
3 C's: collaboration, certainty, and clarity.
And Minister Rosner.
Political will. We know that the energy transition is going to be a very challenging process, a journey, and complex. And it requires that we build coalition for that transformation. But we have a chance to make a difference from what we have done in the past. Our job as policymaker is not to protect the status quo, but to provide a conducive environment so that, for example, private sectors can put their money in and voices are heard. voices that were neglected in the past, for example, women and young people. We need to bring them on board. But at the core of our success, in our view, is political will. Even for things like the ASEAN Power Grid, we believe that the money is out there, that the investment, that the private sector is ready to put the money in, that multilateral institutions are ready to jump in. But it's up to the 10 ASEAN governments, the politicians, to make it happen.
Thank you
Political
very much.
will.
Thank you very much, Minister. Round of applause for this esteemed panel. Thank you very much.
And Rachel, thank you very much for moderating this lively session. Thank you so much, Rachel. Right, a very informative discussion, and of course, our panelists are making their way to the seats. We'd also like to thank our Deputy Prime Minister from Tanzania. Thank you for gracing this occasion very much, sir. Now, ladies and gentlemen, again, we do see a lot of new joiners at the back. It's very dense at the back. For the benefit of those of you who've just joined us, I'd like to mention that we'd like for you to log on to www.siew.gov.sg, where you will be able to access the following: the program across the entire week, ladies and gentlemen, SIEW Live Blog, SIEW Cast, and of course, our sponsors and partners listing. Very important for you to be able to log on to all of that to see the speaker's profile and, of course, all the subject matter in discussion today. Now, we will now proceed into the next segment of the SIEW Summit, starting with a special address by Mr. Amin Nasser, President and Chief Executive Officer of Aramco. Mr. Nasser, please.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a pleasure to be with you all. I would like to thank everyone at the Energy Market Authority for their hospitality and organizing this important annual conference. It is always exciting to be back in Singapore, even when Taylor Swift is not in town. The country has an outstanding reputation for turning vision into reality through leadership, talent, and a relentless focus on what works. That has an important lesson for the global energy transition, as I will explain this morning. It is also wonderful to see people from across the region as Asia becomes the world's economic center of gravity once again. Asia now accounts for almost half of the world GDP, as well as half of the world's population. This year alone, Asia is likely to contribute roughly 60% of the global economic growth, and Asia consumes more than half of the global energy supplies. Crucially, 84% of the consumption is still supplied by conventional energy. In short, Asia is vital to the global economy, our shared climate ambition, and the hopes and dreams of billions of people. So you would think that Asia priority play an equally vital role in the global energy transition planning. But as Singapore's late great leader, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, might have said, the hard truth is that you would be wrong. This may be Asia's century, but Asia's voice and priorities, like those of the broader global South, are hard to see in the current transition planning, and the whole world is feeling the consequences. Transition progress is far slower, far less equitable, and far more complicated than many expected. Three reality gaps stand out in particular. First, Oil use sector differs significantly, which matters. The only major one where a practical energy alternative is currently available is light-duty vehicles. Electric vehicles are certainly making progress. But out of almost 1.5 billion vehicles on the road, only 57 million are EVs, or less than 4%. Even the low level of penetration is mostly limited to the US, China, and the richer countries in the EU, driven by policies, subsidies, and incentives. In the rest of the world, particularly in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, where a lot of the population and energy demand growth is expected, EVs lag far behind. Consumers generally struggle with affordability and infrastructure concern, while they increasingly appreciate that the electricity used to charge batteries come from different energy sources. In Asia, almost 70% of the electricity is still powered by conventional energy, with only 12% by wind and solar. Furthermore, electricity consumption per person is 1/10 the levels of advanced economies. So powering EVs is likely to be increasingly challenging in this region. Also, EV sales are beginning to face headwinds in the mass market now that the niche market of early affluent adopters is mostly served. Additionally, EV progress has no bearing on the 75% of global oil demand. Massive segments like heavy transportation and petrochemical have few economically viable alternatives to oil and gas. Second, geographic regions differ and also matter. Yes, oil growth has plateaued in a few mature economies such as the EU, the US, and Japan, but they still consume large quantities of oil. And while US oil consumption is roughly 22 barrels per person per year, and the EU is around 9 barrels, it is 2.4 barrels in Vietnam, 1.4 barrels in India, and only 1 barrel in Africa. So the Global South is likely to see significant growth in oil demand for a long time as national economies grow and living standards rise, just as developed countries enjoyed for decades. Third, forecasts differ and matter too. Most analysts agree that even when the growth in global oil demand stops at some point, no abrupt drop in overall demand is anticipated. And that stage is likely to be followed by a long plateau. If so, more than 100 million barrels per day would realistically still be required by 2050. This is a stark contrast with those predicting that oil will or must fall to just 25 million barrels per day by then. Being short 75 million barrels every day would be devastating for energy security and affordability. And we are not long on confidence, with a sizable gap between prediction and reality already. Despite trillions of dollars being invested in the global energy transition, oil demand is at an all-time high. Gas demand has also grown by almost 70% since 2000. So rather than an energy transition, we are really talking about energy addition, where just the growth is mostly met by alternative instead of replacing conventional energy in any meaningful way. Yet, the current transition plan continues to ignore this reality, which is why it has failed to deliver in the 3 core areas we were promised it would help most. 1, energy that is affordable. For example, electricity prices in Europe rose as much as 3 to 5 folds in many countries over the past 2 decades, despite the shift to renewables. 2, progress is way off the base. I mentioned low EV penetration, while wind and solar combined supply under 4% of world energy. And 3, transition will be expensive for everyone, with estimate between $100 and $200 trillion required globally by 2050. For developing countries, almost $6 trillion may be required each year. Moreover, in a transition that requires staggering amount of front-end capital investment, the cost of capital is more than twice as high in developing countries where the need is greater. And for the least developed countries, the future looks especially bleak if many have to spend up to half their total GDP every year on transition alone. It is why almost all the recent growth in clean energy investment have been in advanced economies and China. In other words, despite progress in the global north, the global south cannot afford massive investment in new energy, especially when many countries are only at the start of their development journey. Trying to force an unworkable, unaffordable transition plan on them will only threaten their economic progress and even social cohesion. And the hammer blow for the current plan is that it has not even been able to reduce demand for highly carbon-intensive coal, let alone replace it with the highest level ever seen. Because of these multiple deficiencies, the world is not on track to meet affordability transitions at the speed they want or emission targets. So the world urgently needs a transition plan that works. What could that reset look like? To begin with, planners must stop assuming the world can replace its conventional energy needs with half-baked alternatives almost overnight, particularly in the global south. This assumption is seriously discouraging investment in these crucial conventional sources. Let's be clear, all sources of energy will be required for decades to come. Planners must also abandon the belief that a single plan can meet the needs of more than 200 countries. That assumption is like asking for a Wi-Fi password in a village without electricity. Each country should choose an energy mix that helps them meet their climate ambition at a speed and a manner that is right for them. And those actual priorities, especially those of the global south, must be the DNA of a global transition if it is to succeed. In addition, the world must, of course, accelerate the development of new energy sources and lower carbon technology that can one day compete on price and performance. Consumers can then embrace lower carbon product without the mandate, subsidies, and tariff that distorts markets. But our main focus should be on the levers available now. This means also encouraging the essential investment in proven and reliable energy sources like oil and gas that developing nations need and can afford. It also means prioritizing the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions associated with those conventional sources. For example, a shift from coal to renewable has certainly reduced CO2 emissions from the US electricity generation. But the shift from coal to gas accounts for almost 2/3 of that reduction. And it means going after the low-hanging fruit of more efficient energy use, a circular carbon economy, and CCUS. This ideology-free approach simply prioritizes systematic emission reduction where the impact is greater at an acceptable cost within reasonable timeframes and whatever the source of technology. It is what I call a multi-source, multi-speed, and multi-dimensional approach that addresses the actual security, affordability, and sustainability priority of all countries, not just a few. A transition plan 2.0 with Asia at its heart. Ladies and gentlemen, as energy consumers around the world are served an increasingly unrealistic and expensive transition, the less they like the taste. They hunger for something that connects their passion for the net zero future we all want with a reality we can all afford and a relentless focus on what works. This was Mr. Lee Kuan Yew mindset, and I believe it could change mission impossible into mission possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nasr. Thank you very much. We invite you to remain on stage for this discussion. Now, moderating this session, ladies and gentlemen, coming up on stage is our presenter from Singapore's very own Channel News Asia, Miss Elizabeth Neo. Let's welcome her too with a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this session. Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, distinguished guests, and of course, a very warm welcome back to Singapore, Ms. Nasir. We're really glad to have you with us at SIEW. Thank you for that speech as well. Now, you made some crucial points there. The first being Asia's voice and priorities, like the broader global south, as you said, is largely absent from the current energy transition planning. And you talked about this transition 2.0. How do you expect your ideas to be received by this so-called influential minority that has been pushing for and forecasting this drastic drop in oil use?
You know, Asia is very important and critical. As I said, you know, more than 50% of the world population is in Asia, 50% of the GDP, 60 to 70% of the economic growth, we are seeing it in Asia. Basically, the whole also global south matters very when it comes to energy transition. And when 1/10 of the energy consumption today per person is in the global south compared to the global north, it is very important to take what's happening in Asia into consideration, considering these are developing countries and they need to develop over time. What we are asking for is that we need to be pragmatic, and one size fits all is not going to work. What we need to tackle first is the emission, and we need to have investment to reduce our carbon footprint by using CCUS and other efficiency improvements and all of it, while we are building the renewables. We should not be shifting to something or a plan B without making sure plan A is affordable, shifting to plan B without making sure that plan B is affordable to the majority of the people. For example, today, we are seeing, you know, what is happening in Europe with electricity generation. As more shift to renewable, the cost is going up. People misunderstand. They look at only the cost of generation. And the cost of generation for an intermittent power, when you hook it up to the grid, the cost goes up. That's a reality. We are a big investor in renewable. We see that. But when you ask me about what is the cost of generation, the cost of generation is not that high. The minute you hook it to the grid, the cost will go up. This is where people are not really looking at. The minute you add battery storage, by the way, the cost is going to go much more than gas. So what we need is to invest in technologies over the long term to help us reduce the cost of renewables and the new energies and hydrogens and solar and wind, to ensure that what we are availing to the masses is secure and affordable. If we don't do that, coal is going to increase. We predicted coal peaked 5 times so far, 5 times. Last year, coal increased by 2 million barrels of oil equivalent. This is how much coal increased last year. I don't think the transition is healthy, just looking at what's happening in coal alone. So affordability is an issue. Security of supply is an issue. Unless you have secure and affordable, you cannot meet your sustainability. So we need to build the renewable, but make sure it is affordable. You cannot make sure it's affordable by having the burden for government to put huge incentives, because incentives is not sustainable over the long term. They might be okay in the short term. The minute these incentives disappear, the higher cost is going to be hitting the consumers.
Indeed, and you also talked about, the progress of energy transition. You're saying that it's far too slow, not equitable enough, and also too complicated. So then what have you seen on the ground? And given that we're not at peak oil yet, given the growing demands from the global south and also, the rising standards of living that we're seeing there, how do you expect this to play into a global forecasts? Are current forecasts perhaps still realistic then?
Let's look at the numbers, because, numbers can explain everything. Today, we are at record level in oil. This year, our predictions will be 104.5. Gas increased by 70% from 2000 to today. Coal at record level at 8.7 billion tons. So all conventional energy is increasing. People mislead when it comes to number. For example, 3 decades ago, oil was at 83%. Conventional energy, oil, gas, and coal, at 83%. Today, it's at 80%. So we are making a big impact through solar and wind, which is, by the way, it's 4% of the primary energy today. No, it's 80%, but in absolute, it's 100 million barrels of oil equivalent more at 80%. This is how much we are higher today. So I think what is important, as I said, we need to work. What we have achieved in efficiency improvement over the last 15 years is 90 million barrels of oil equivalent reduction. 90, compared to addition or elimination of 15 million barrels of oil equivalent by solar and wind. So we need to build the renewables. We are the biggest, the kingdom will be shifting to 50% renewable in the energy sector by 2030, 50%. So we are for that. But at the same time, our gas by 2030 will increase by 60%. More than 60%, by the way. So we need to invest in all sources of energy at the same time to make sure it is going to be affordable for the people. At the same time, we need to build the new. We need to work on technology and innovation. Cost of hydrogen. Hydrogen is a case in point. Everybody talks about hydrogen, and we need hydrogen, especially for the hard-to-abate sector. Solar, wind will work for light vehicles and power generation. But when you come to the hard-to-abate sector like cement, aluminum, steel, even, by the way, fertilizers, most of the gray ammonia used for fertilizers is gray ammonia. CO2 is emitted. The minute you use blue ammonia, costs will go higher. So we need to identify hydrogen today. It's cost a lot. It's $200 for blue, $200 to $250 per barrel of oil equivalent. For green, it's more than $400. So we need time to scale up these technologies and new energy sources for the cost to go down, for it to become affordable and secure. Otherwise, we will continue to see calling about coal peaking, and it doesn't peak because it is more affordable. We need to provide, as I said, energy that is secure, affordable, and sustainable. You cannot talk about sustainability without making sure you ensure security and affordability.
Yes, and in this new energy plan that you're talking about, this energy transition plan, you say that it has to be multi-source, multi-speed, multi-dimension. In short, it cannot be a one-size-fits-all approach. So how should we then be looking at energy transition globally, whether you are from the global south or whether you are from the global north?
I think we should continue to invest in renewable and add more renewable to our grids. But at the same time, I think we can achieve much more in terms of emission reductions by introducing more efficiency in what we are doing. We need to ensure that we scale up carbon capture using storage. This is very important technology. Even under the popular net zero scenario, 25% of the reduction will come from CCUS. So we need to continue to invest on all of these. We need to identify technologies like hydrogen at a lower cost for the hard-to-abate sector because they emit 25% of what we are seeing today. 20 to 25% come from the hard-to-abate sector, which we don't have any solution for today because the cost is high. So I think depending on the economic maturity of each country, the transition will take place, but having one size fits all is not going to work because each country will look at what is acceptable based on their economic maturity and what works for them, ensuring that the energy they provide to their people is secure, affordable, and at the same time sustainable. So it will take some time, decades, as technologies scale up and develop and can be utilized to reduce the cost. But we should not ask for stop using oil and gas while the other alternative is not ready, cannot shoulder the need of energy requirement today, and the cost is high compared to what is existing today.
All right, Ms. Nasser, I do appreciate your insights today, and thank you for that speech as well. You've definitely given us a lot to think about and talk about at SIEW, and this is a perfect opportunity for it. For all in attendance today, thank you for your time, and I wish you a fruitful week at SIEW. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for moderating that. Can I invite you for a quick photograph together with the both of you just right there, and the photographers are in place? There we go. Thank you, Mr. Nasser. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you very much for your moment on stage. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we invite His Excellency Dr. Kao Kim Horn, Secretary General ASEAN, for the SES keynote address. Your Excellency, please.
Your Excellency Gan Kim Yong, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Trade and Industry of the Republic of Singapore, Your Excellency Dato Sri Haji Adila bin Haji Yusof, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Energy Transition and Water Transformation of Malaysia, Your Excellency Kai Ratana, Minister of Mines and Energy of Cambodia, Your Excellency Bunkam Wurishit, Minister of Natural Resources and Environment of La PDR, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished guests, esteemed participants, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you today at this prestigious event to discuss a topic that is central to our future, the vision of a connected and sustainable energy world. This dialogue is essential as we work towards a resilient energy infrastructure that benefits both our economies and our environment. The energy sector currently stands on the cusp of a transformative revolution profoundly influenced by global megatrends that are reshaping its landscape like never before. Climate change and the urgent need for decarbonization are driving a significant shift towards renewable sources. The rising consumer demand for sustainable and affordable energy solutions underscores the necessity for relentless innovation, while technological advancements such as digitalization and smart grids are enhancing efficiency and connectivity across the sector. Additionally, geopolitical tensions and the quest for energy security compel nations to diversify their energy portfolios. Together, these megatrends present both formidable challenges and unprecedented opportunities as we embark on a journey towards a sustainable and resilient energy future. However, the path forward demands collaboration across sectors and borders, alongside a commitment to policies that support sustainable practices. The theme of this year's Singapore International Energy Week, therefore, resonates deeply with our aspirations within ASEAN. As we navigate the complexities of the global energy transition, our shared commitment to a sustainable, secure, connected, and inclusive energy future has never been more important. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, today I would like to share the progress we have made in key regional initiatives, particularly the ASEAN Power Grid, APG, as well as highlights from ASEAN strategic partnerships and our vision guiding us beyond 2025. These elements are also interlinked, forming a comprehensive strategy that will shape ASEAN's energy landscape for years to come. The ASEAN Power Grid stands as a testament to what we can do and achieve together when ASEAN member states unite around a common goal. Our vision has always been to create a harmonized and interconnected power system that facilitates cross-border electricity trade among our nations within the ASEAN community. Once an ambitious and elusive goal, the APG undoubtedly has now emerged as a crucial catalyst for our quest for energy resilience, regional integration, and transition towards a low-carbon future. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, in 2024, we achieved a significant milestone with the completion of Phase 1 of the Lao PDR, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore Power Integration Project. This initiative has showcased the feasibility and tangible benefits of multilateral cross-border power trade, serving as a crucial building block of the APG vision, bringing us closer to achieving a more interconnected and resilient regional power network. Additionally, our ongoing work on the Brunei Darussalam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines Power Integration Project underscore our commitment to expanding these efforts across the entire region. However, developing extensive infrastructure like the APG requires substantial investment, with an estimate that ASEAN would need approximately $764 billion for power generation and transmission system through 2040. In this regard, we recognize that progress in the APG and other energy priorities has been significantly bolstered by our extensive network of dialogue partners, international organizations, and financial institutions. This strong collaboration has enabled us to leverage technical expertise, mobilize investment, and refine the policy frameworks essential for driving our energy transition. Together, we are building a solid foundation that not only supports our current initiatives, but also paves the way for a sustainable energy future across the region. Recently, ASEAN recognized the initiatives put forth by the Asian Development Bank, ADB, and the World Bank to establish a dedicated financing facility for the ASEAN Power Grid. This collaborative approach highlights the critical importance of working together to meet our region's energy needs while ensuring that our economic development remains sustainable and inclusive. Given the substantial effort required, we encourage everyone, especially those who are gathering here today, to collaborate with us in realizing the APG interconnection. Whether through knowledge sharing, technical assistance, or investment support, your engagement is vital to our collective success in this endeavor. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, beyond the ASEAN Power Grid, our partnerships have yielded tangible achievements across the energy sector. Since the launch of the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, Phase 2, 2021-2025, we have made significant progress towards our energy goals. Our target of achieving a 32% share of renewable energy in installed power capacity by 2025 has spurred greater integration of renewables. As of 2022, we surpassed this goal, reaching an impressive 33.3% in renewable installed capacity. Our advancement in energy efficiency are equally remarkable, with a 24.5% reduction in energy intensity since 2005, demonstrating our region's commitment to optimizing energy use. These achievements are part of a broader energy strategy to build a sustainable, inclusive, and secure energy ecosystem for the entire ASEAN community. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, these accomplishments have positioned us very well to pursue the next stage of ASEAN energy journey. As we approach the conclusion of the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation Phase 2, we are forging ahead with a clear and ambitious vision under Phase 3 from 2026 to 2030. Recently, ASEAN adopted a new theme for this phase, advancing regional cooperation in ensuring energy security and accelerating decarbonization for a just and inclusive energy transition. This theme not only reflects our collective endeavors, but also aligns with global megatrends in the energy sector. Our focus will encompass expanding our energy infrastructure, enhancing digitalization and smart grid systems, advancing renewable energy, and exploring emerging technologies such as carbon capture, utilization and storage, and energy storage solutions. These initiatives will position ASEAN for a future where energy is not only abundant, but also sustainable, affordable, and accessible for all. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I truly believe that energy development in ASEAN is about making a meaningful difference in the lives of our people. By providing reliable and affordable energy, we enable families to power their homes, children to study under bright and stable lights, the public facilities to operate smoothly. This translates into attracting more investment, create more jobs, building strong businesses, and empowering communities, particularly in areas that need it the most. Our commitment to clean and renewable energy also promises cleaner air and healthier environment for everyone. Ultimately, this is about building a healthier and more hopeful future for all ASEAN citizens of nearly 700 million. I'm confident that with the continued support of our partners and the determination and collaborative spirit of our member states, we can overcome energy challenges we face. More importantly, we will position ASEAN as a global model for resilience and sustainability, especially in the energy sector. In conclusion, the journey towards a connected and sustainable energy world today, and of course in the future, is no longer a distant dream. It is now within our reach, driven by groundbreaking technologies and an unwavering commitment to sustainable development. As we face the challenges ahead, let us harness our collective expertise, foster closer collaboration, and drive innovative solutions that prioritize sustainability and resilience. Let us build a brighter and more connected energy future for all. I thank you, and a good morning to all of you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you kindly. Right, ladies and gentlemen, next up, it is with great pleasure that I introduce our first session for the Singapore Energy Summit, presented by DBS Bank. The first session is titled Asia's Collaborative Journey to a Sustainable Energy Future. Now, do note that simultaneous interpretation will be made available for this session, and these headsets are available on both the left and right of the ballroom. English will be in Channel 1 and, of course, Mandarin Channel 2. Just a point to note, ladies and gentlemen, that there will be closed captioning, and this is provided by AI or artificial intelligence to the best of the current technology it receives as well. Yeah. Now, to access the Q&A platform, not to forget to scan the QR code you see on the screens right in front of you right now. Our moderator for this session is Rachel Kelly. You just saw her earlier on stage, ladies and gentlemen. She'll be moderating this session. And with her is His Excellency Si Chin Wan, Secretary of Environment and Ecology, Hong Kong, Francesco La Camera, Director General, International Renewable Energy Agency, Pang Xiaokang, President, State Grid Corporation of China, Wong Kim Yin, Group President and CEO, Samcorp Industries, and completing this illustrious panel is Lim Wee Sing, Group Head of Sustainability and Energy, Institutional Banking Group, DBS Bank. Rachel, do enjoy this session. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and good to be back on stage with all of you again to discuss this very important topic of a connected and sustainable world. Now, as we've heard over the course of the morning, Asia has one of the highest rates of energy demand. And for example, here in Southeast Asia, the region's demand for oil and electricity alone has grown 80% since 2000. Now, to achieve our sustainable energy goals across the region, we must add renewables into the mix. But to do this, regional connectivity and partnership is key. And aptly a connected and sustainable energy world, we're going to look at how the convergence of connectivity and sustainability is key in shaping our energy future here. So thank you again to my esteemed panelists joining us this morning. To start off today's session, I would like to ask Mr. Lim. This panel is brought to us by DBS, and we're talking about the collaborative and journey to a sustainable energy future. Can you share with us then from the bank's perspective where we are on that journey?
Good. Thank you, Rachel, and good morning all. For context, I think we have heard from the minister just now that in 2023, for every $1 that went into fossil fuel investments, about 1.7 went into clean energy investments. So we're at that tipping point where variable renewable energy investments is now much larger than fossil fuel investments. Having said that, the incremental growth in power demand is still higher than renewable energy growth. So approaching the tipping point, but not yet. But it does signal that increasingly economies, in particular China and India, are starting to have to deal with the issues associated with a higher proportion of what we call VREs, variable renewable energy. And that's on the macro side of things. On the less macro side of things, across our business, actually on the business as usual front, renewables, offshore wind, solar, wind, those are quite standard already. But increasingly, we have seen financing for batteries, storage, pumped hydro. Increasingly, we are seeing financings for smart meters. And again, that on the micro side kind of corroborates, right, with the trend we're seeing on the macro side, that increasingly people are needing storage to deal with surplus resources during sun hours or when the wind blows strong and demand is not there, and to dispatch these batteries in the reverse. Smart metering, obviously, increasingly, economies are thinking about how do we manage also on the demand side, right? Dynamic pricing so that we can shift loads and smooth demand. So I think that trend we're seeing both in the business and on the macro side speaks into this need for collaboration, because if I can use an analogy from Singapore's history, right? We are dependent on natural gas, but in the early days, those of us who are old enough will remember it was largely piped natural gas, right? Pending the advent of transportable molecules, we had to pipe gas from Malaysia, we had to pipe gas from Indonesia. We're seeing the same in renewables, right? Except at a larger scale. Largely also because there's a ticking timeline of 2050. So I think as you see that that need for an ASEAN power grid that you just heard, that actually speaks into, if you really want to integrate renewables and enjoy the cost efficiencies of renewables, you need that large land footprint, pending the advent of green molecules that you can transport in. Pending that, you need that large land footprint to optimize demand supply. So that's why that need for collaboration across ASEAN. Of course, most of us also know ASEAN Power Grid has been talked about for decades. We're seeing momentum again. Where do we stand on that? I'm hopeful that the imports into Singapore, I've spoken at a few forums, the imports into Singapore, I hope will catalyze that 6 gigawatt. I hope will catalyze actually the outworking of the ASEAN Power Grid as to how it should operate, because it is a very attractive investment, but I think it's important to make it win-win-win for all sides.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lim, and I think that sets the stage for my next question in terms of, as Mr. Lim mentioned, the ASEAN Power Grid is starting to see momentum again, but are we seeing enough momentum when it comes to the transition towards renewable energies? And I'm going to start off by asking that question to Mr. LaCamera. From your perspective, are things moving fast enough when it comes to renewables?
In fact, no. At least if we look at the renewables growth in light of the Paris Agreement, in light of the COP28 call for tripling renewable energy capacity and double energy efficiency. So just to be clear, we have seen year after year a new record of renewable installed capacity. So last year was 473 gigawatts. Just to translate gigawatt in reality, this means that in 1 year, we have installed more power capacity of renewable than in nuclear in 70 years. This for giving the sense of the scale of the transformation that is happening. And also in 2024, we will have a new record of renewable installed capacity. We had last year 87% of new installed capacity was renewables. We can say that in the largest part of the world today, renewables are the cheapest way to produce electricity. So these are the numbers. So we are moving, and no one can stop this process, to a new energy system that will be largely dominated by renewables, complemented by hydrogen, mainly green hydrogen, and the sustainable use of biomass. This is happening, and no one can stop it. No one. So the problem is not the direction of travel, that is perfectly clear. The problem is if the speed and the scale of this travel is consistent with the commitment in the Paris Agreement to keep the rise of the temperature well below the 2 degrees, or make all efforts to stay on the 1.5. This, we are not in this path. Just to give an idea, tripling renewable solar capacity means 11.2 terawatt in place in 2030. This is exactly the number, if we consider the demand, to offer a supply of energy that is consistent with the 43% of reduction of CO2 as requested by the IPCC. This means that, unfortunately, we have to add 7 point something of terawatt from now to 2030. This means that also with this new record, we are less than half of what is needed to put the ship in track to achieve the 1.5. So this is exactly where we are. And I really wish to call everyone to set the rules of our discussions. The rule of our discussion is science. We cannot go out of the field. As you are playing football, you cannot go where the spectators are. You have to stay in the field. So this means the science says that we have already should have picked up oil and coal. He said that from the next year we have to pick gas, the use of gas. This is what the science is saying. So if we want to stick with science, this has to be in our commitment, in our chat, in our talk. Because if we are going out of this, we are going out of what the international, multilateral system has already agreed to go for. So the direction of travel is clear. The speed and scale is not there. I really like it, one intervention, I don't remember now, who say that what we need is the political will. We need to avoid any kind of misunderstanding of what is needed. Also, when we talk about technologies, we need renewables just for one reason, because it's the only technology that we can deploy in time to 2030. Because the climate change, the physical climate change is a very tough one. We cannot postpone things. We have to be in time. If not, the cost will be too high for our society and for our well-being.
And just to add, Mr. Wong, then, what's your perspective in terms of the rate at which things are moving forward? Obviously, a number of projects have been announced from Sembcorp when it comes to renewable energy projects here in Singapore, across Asia, but the momentum is picking up, as Mr. Lim mentioned as well.
First of all, thank you to the organizers. And Rachel, as you mentioned, Sembcorp, in the last few years, we've been very focused on deploying renewable energy. Today, we have about 15,000 megawatts across Asia, mainly India, China, Southeast Asia. And in this journey, one of the things that has been very obvious to us operating in these markets is that the importance of a connected system. So in the case of India, and particularly China, and Mr. Pang later will tell us how they have been connecting China with the grid. Without a connected grid, you cannot let the resource meet the demand. All right, so that part of it is very stuck to us because we also operate in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is well endowed with resources. Southeast Asia, particularly, there are pockets of demand that has affordability. Let's say Singapore, right? We are prepared to pay for green energy, and yet we don't have the benefit of a national grid like in India or in China, whereby then we can connect the resources from other parts of Southeast Asia to Singapore. So that's one key part of it. The other thing that I thought could be useful when we talk about connected and sustainable energy world, other than physical connection, because these things are going to take time, but in lieu of a physical connection, perhaps policymakers as well as industry participants should also give some attention to the virtual connection. So, for instance, what I refer to is the carbon trading, right? So, or carbon exchange, such that then the greenness associated with the green resources can actually attract the funding. Then that will also help accelerate the developments of some of these green resources, because otherwise they are stranded waiting for the physical connection to show up. So those are the in terms of a connected world, as a renewable player in Asia, it's something that is very upfront, right in our faces for Sembcorp. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Pang, from your perspective, we talk about an interconnected world. What are your thoughts on the pace at which we're moving international collaboration from the perspective of State Grid?
从近些年的情况来看呢，各个国家对于我们能源转型的区域合作，大家都形成了共识。而且最近这些年，这样的共识呢，使得大家都付出了很多积极的努力，而且这个成果是非常丰硕的。但是呢，气候变化确实是咱们全人类的一个共同的挑战，是我们共同的一个课题。 我是觉得现在进步很大，但是呢，今后努力的空间和潜力也是很大的。我觉得以后啊，可能我们应该以还应该更进一步、更加开放的、务实的态度来加强合作，特别是一些技术方面、投资方面、一些机制方面，这方面区域合作的空间，我觉得还是很大的。
When it comes now to Hong Kong, we've spoken a little bit about hydrogen and international collaboration and the importance of collaboration when it comes to new technologies. And I know with Hong Kong, the hydrogen policy states that the ultimate goal is green hydrogen. So my question for you is twofold. First is, how far are you on that journey? And secondly, what more do you think is needed when it comes to international collaboration to boost innovation and technology for renewables, especially when it comes to hydrogen?
Right. Well, as to Hong Kong, well, we look at hydrogen because of two reasons. Well, the first one is decarbonization. Yeah. In Hong Kong, our carbon emissions will peak in 2014, and compared to the peak, well, our carbon emissions have reduced by about a quarter by now. Yeah. And therefore, we have set an interim target to reduce our carbon emissions by half before 2035, and then carbon neutrality before 2050. Given the target to cut our carbon emissions by half before 2035, we'll have to look at different solutions, different tools to help us to reduce our carbon. We announced that our Carbon Action Plan 2050 2 years ago. And however, there are actually many different solutions and tools towards carbon neutrality to reduce carbon. We need to choose the tool which was most cost effective. And hydrogen is one of the tools that we are looking at. Because for Hong Kong, we have an advantage in that our town gas is consisted of about 50% of hydrogen already. And therefore, we already have a network of pipelines supplying hydrogen all over the city. Yeah. It will be very convenient for us to set up filling stations by extracting the hydrogen from the pipeline and then fill up cars or whatever in Hong Kong. That's why we would like to look at whether hydrogen is a fuel for us for tomorrow. What we are doing now is that we are trying to get Hong Kong prepared. We have set up our technical codes for the application. We are going to set up our legislation for the application. And we are going to set up a basic infrastructure so that people can fill up their vehicles and they can buy hydrogen for their electricity generator, etc. in Hong Kong. And we are also funding different types of pilot programs to identify areas where hydrogen can be applied in a cost-effective manner in Hong Kong. That is what we are doing now. Yeah. And the second reason why we would like to look at hydrogen is because China, our motherland, also places a lot of emphasis in developing hydrogen technology. And they have a number of good quality products and technology, etc. We believe for Hong Kong, we can grasp the opportunity to becoming a hub for promoting the different products and technologies in the mainland, not only for use in Hong Kong, but also for other countries and places to help them to go through the green transition process. Yeah. And therefore, we try to look at hydrogen in that sort of manner. Yeah. And you asked my next question is about how to enhance or speed up the collaboration. Yeah. And I think regional collaboration is very, very important because for different countries, different cities, we have different strengths, we have different demands, we have different problems. Yeah. If we can work together, then we'll be much well prepared and capable to solve those problems, to meet the challenges. Yeah. I think three elements are particularly important to speed up the collaboration. One, I think the word political will has been mentioned a few times today, and I think that is very true. Because if the government will set up clear goals and guidelines and targets, etc., those goals and targets will drive actions. When people know that they need to do something, to deliver something, they will seek collaboration with others. Therefore, I think it's very important for the government to set clear goals and targets. And the second element was the industry. Yeah. They should not look at the green transition just as another business opportunity, but also there is something that must do. They must do, and therefore they have to put their efforts to find the solutions quickly and the most cost-effective solutions. As I've said, if they know that they need to do something, they would seek solution. And the third element is platform. We need a platform to enable different parties to come together to exchange experience, exchange ideas, and to seek different forms of collaboration or cooperation or opportunities. And therefore, I would like also to thank Singapore for organizing this International Energy Week, which is a very good platform for people to come together to collaborate and to seek opportunities for new collaboration or opportunities. I think these are all what can help us to speed up the collaboration. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And when it comes to collaboration and challenges, you mentioned obviously it differs across the region. And I would like to ask Mr. Peng, from your perspective, we've spoken a bit about grid stability being a key issue. Perhaps you can share with us, some of your best practices and strategies.
这个中国的能源转型啊，近几年以来速度非常快。其中很大的一个标志呢，就是我们新能源的发展，装机啊，这个容量的增长是非常快的。这个2023年的时候，就是去年啊，我们中国的整个新能源增加的装机是293吉瓦，这个吉瓦，这个预计啊，2024年比这个数还要大。 我们预计至少是300吉瓦，300吉瓦。在面对这么快的新能源发展的快速增长的这么一个情况呢，我们电网企业呢做的事情啊，主要在4个方面。第一个方面呢，最主要是一个在电网规划方面，因为我们作为电网企业呢，我们会配合政府呢做好整个电力的规划。 包括了电源和我们电网一起协同的一个规划，使得这个电源和我们电网能够同步规划、同步建设、同步投产。在中国呢，有一个非常大的一个这个标志性的工程，我们称之为沙戈荒。沙戈荒实际上就是沙漠、戈壁、荒滩，这是中国政府做出的决策。 在那上面呢，做大量的开发，光伏啊，这个风电啊，还有等等。同时呢，还治理这个沙漠，在这个过程中间呢，我们配合做了这个它对应的这个外送通道。我们现在已经建成了有11个外送通道，这个累计接入的装机呢超过了81吉瓦，到现在为止，后面还有很多的规模会进来，这是一个方面。 第二个呢，就是我们的并网，就是把我们的 发电厂哈，能够新能源发电厂站能够顺利的接入到我们这个电网。在这个电网这个环节里边呢，就这个环节呢，就刚才主持人您提到的，就是一个就是可靠性的问题，还有一个呢就是承载力的问题，还有一个承载力的问题。我们到现在到9月份为止吧，就是上个月的月底，国家电网并网的风光的风电光伏的新能源装机已经到了1018吉瓦。这个数字是非常巨大的哈，1018吉瓦。近5年呢，中国的这个风光的整个装机的年均的增长率是23.7%，这个速度也是确实是非常快的。第3个方面呢，电网企业来说，就是我们作为国家电网公司而言呢，做的工作呢就是配置，就是怎么把这新能源的电力啊，怎么能把它分配出去。在这个过程中间呢，我们其实是分成2类电源，一种是集中式的这个新能源，一种是分布式的新能源。更多的来说呢，对我们来说比较难配置的，就主要是这个集中式的，我们需要建设大量的这个特高压、超高压的线路去把它输送出去。到现在为止，我们已经建成了35回特高压的工程。特高压的工程包括直流，包括交流，把这些电力啊，这些电力呢能够输送到遥远的这个负荷中心，因为光伏的这个光伏负极的地区和我们中国的负荷，就是用电负荷这个高的地区呢，它是逆向分布的，在不同的地方，所以需要远距离的输送。到现在为止吧，我们这个跨省跨区的输电能力已经超过了300吉瓦。这个2023年输送的清洁电量占到了577太瓦时。最后一个就是市场机制，中国的电力市场这几年啊发展的非常快。我们以前呢，就是我们有中长期市场，我们现在呢全国的这个现货市场也已经基本上建成了。这还有其中市场还有辅助服务市场，也就是说，中国政府现在正在大力推进的就是全国统一的电力市场建设。这一块呢，大家可能后续会看到很多的这个成果会陆续的出现。这也是中央政府现在在大力推动的吧。啊，我就先介绍这么多吧，时间有点长了哈，谢谢。
And onto that, as we're talking about all of these mega projects, when it comes to the energy transition and renewables, obviously a big conversation that we've been having today is around financing. And in the past, we've spoken about what constitutes a bankable project, and this year the attention turns towards transition finance. Ms. Lim, so I'd like to ask you, when we're looking at transition finance, your perspective on the role it plays to a sustainable energy future, but also the potential size of the transition finance market.
Okay. Well, thanks, Rachel. Let me start with defining transition finance, but maybe with help from a quote from the ex-MD of MAS, Ravi Menon. He said this: to reach net zero, greening the economy is more important than growing the green economy. Greening the economy is more important than growing. So green finance alone is not enough. The world needs transition finance. So the idea is to decarbonize the economy, not just your portfolio. Right? I'm speaking from the financier investment side of things. It is much easier, of course, to decarb your portfolio. Just sell everything that is not green, and then you kind of manage that. But if we look at global assets, we use a proxy. Let's say MSCI All Country Index, and you put them on the sustainability spectrum, maybe about 10% is what we call stranded assets. So these are assets that are not green, in trouble, could be stranded or stranded already. And then the green pot, which is where most people are putting their money, is, depending on you use global AUMs or MSCI, etc., let's be a bit generous, is 10 to 20%. So let's take 20%. 20%, 10%, everything in between, 70% is in between, right? Which means that the capital flows we have been seeing go into, it has been largely the green bucket, right? So The in-betweens are what we define as transition finance, because I think someone raised the point, they are hard to abate, right? Typically, there will be industries like cement, steel, aluminum, chemicals, and also oil and gas, obviously, and heavy transportation. So these are opportunities that I feel I'm very passionate about, actually, because they are largely overlooked. Actually, the opportunity to answer your question, it's about, well, all these numbers are all big numbers, but it's about 400 billion a year, if you get to do it, right? But the challenge, obviously, is the investment community needs to start thinking in 3 buckets, not just 1 bucket, not just green bucket. Green bucket, we don't need to talk anymore, but even the stranded assets, right? For DBS, we are working, I think in previous forums I've said, we're working with INA, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, to manage the early phase-out of coal-fired power plants, because we need to decarbonize. So we don't just need to grow low-emissions assets, we need to decarbonize or reduce the emissions of the existing. So that's one, coal, because the coal-fired power plants. But I think not many people also know, actually the steel mills in China and India in particular are also very young, and they are very big in terms of CO2, right? So another opportunity to manage that phase out, so that's that bucket. A bit more controversial, but needs to be done. The middle bucket, I think, is where we need, again, collaboration, because if you want to think of 3 buckets, that middle bucket, called transition finance, to be very fair to our hard-to-abate friends, there are many where the technological solutions are not there yet, right? Of course, you can put solar panel on a steel mill and all that, but the blast furnace is the blast furnace, coking coal is coking coal. That's the elephant in the room. And there was an interesting survey done by Mazda when they interviewed 500 of these executives in the high-emitting sectors. And actually, only 40% of them said they have a plan to net zero, right? Pledges, everybody makes, right? Most people make pledges, but plan, only 40%. So 60% have not made a plan, and even the 40%, out of the 40%, only 30% say they have a budget for it, okay? 70% of them actually have not thought through the journey of financing. So the opportunity is actually quite large, right? And we need all 3 stakeholders. There will be more stakeholders, but let me just put 3 categories. So investors, we need to think in 3 buckets if we want to catalyze transition finance, which is quite critical to getting to net zero. Then the second one will be companies themselves, right? You need to develop transition plans, right? There are tools out there. DBS as a bank, we're very happy to advise you to a bankable transition plan, right? Of course, operationally it's challenging, and we do know even from the IEA that post-2035, actually assumptions around carbon capture, around hydrogen, all that, those are assumptions that are not there yet. But that's why there's a term called align to 1.5, and increasingly in transition finance, there's a term called aligning, okay, en route. Getting more, less CO2 is still better than just doing it the same. So companies need to think around transition plans, and we're quite happy to see how we can help and journey with you. And of course, the third stakeholder will be the governments. And that's where I do a big shout out to our MAS. I think our Singapore government actually has come up with a taxonomy that has a transition in there. It's in a traffic light color. Green obviously is green. Red is the stranded bucket. But amber is the color code they give to transition. So it's time bound, right? For example, in Singapore, I think you have heard we will need natural gas for quite a while. But increasingly, we do transition finance of these assets where they are hydrogen ready. And if you go look at the taxonomy, you can Google it. It's on the web. You can see that at different milestones, the percentage of hydrogen readiness needs to increase. So I thought that is a very practical way to be future ready, but also to protect against lock-in of carbon, and also to watch out for energy security. So that's Singapore, but we really need to make these taxonomies a lot more interoperable across regions, and that's where the governments and the regulators would really help. So transition finance, big thing, start thinking in terms of 3 buckets, opportunity is larger than just green assets.
That's right. So we're looking at policy, we're looking at finance, and we're looking at technological innovation. And Mr. Wong, I'm mindful of time. The clock is flashing red, but I'd really love to hear your perspective on what Sembcorp is doing when it comes to innovating and advancing renewable technologies and rollout.
Well, when we say today's theme is a connected and sustainable energy world, so even as we deploy renewables, and other panelists have spoken a lot about what it takes, including financing. One thing that I do want to emphasize is that it must be just and equitable transition. Right? What that means is that in developing Asia, particularly in Southeast Asia, you can see many countries are in varying stages of development, and we need to address their development needs even as we transit to a greener world. So in that sense, what I might want to say, some people might not like to hear it, is really that some notion of green is better than no green at all. Or a lighter brown might be better than totally brown or black. So what I'm heading towards is actually maybe we need to accept from a transition perspective, from a transition financing perspective, alternate form of lesser brown energy, for instance, gas, right? So, for instance, Singapore, we are still heavily reliant on natural gas. We are trying to decarbonize, go to more efficient machines, blend it with green hydrogen and so on. But, you have to recognize that at some point, at least in the medium-term future, we will still be reliant on gas. And in order for our regional economies to develop in a just and equitable way, to transit in a just and equitable way, we need to make sure that they also have an opportunity to develop. And in that sense, what Sembcorp coming back, what we're doing is that we are also taking on a more pragmatic sense when we are supporting the energy transition with our customers and in the economies that we are going into. And because of that, you can see us not just deploying renewables, but we're also supporting economies with gas, more efficient gas technology, so that then they have the opportunity to win, they have the opportunity to develop as well.
And I'm very interested to hear Mr. Lacamera's take on that. More of an olive green transition rather than a green. Do you think that could slow things down when it comes to your renewable energy targets?
The question that you pose brings us to another question. That is why renewables today, as the cheapest way to produce power, are clean, are the most easy way to ensure energy security because of this decentralization. So why we are not accelerating to be in line with the achievement of the Paris Agreement goal? We at the RENA, we have identified 3 main barriers. One has been discussed in length today, so the infrastructure. We have not today the infrastructure that allows to have more renewables into the system. So we need grids that are interconnected, that are flexible and balanced. We need port. We need civil infrastructure. Second, we need a legal environment that is favorable for renewables. Legal environment is still favorable to fossil fuels. So the price in the market is defined by the marginal cost. This does not work for renewables. We need long-term contracts. We need an environment, a legal environment that is conducive for having more renewables into the grid. Third, we don't have, the centralized system is much better for energy security for other reasons that I mentioned, but it's less easy to manage that centralized system based on fossil fuel. We need institutions that should be able to manage this complexity. And we have not professional and not yet skilled workforce to fit to the energy system that we are building. So all this can make the difference. And when we call about the way we can finance in transition, I'm concerned that when we talk about the multilateral financial system, it seems that the main problem is to have a more inclusive process, decision-making process, fine. That we need to have more concessional loans and grants, fine. But for what? What could be the main focus of the multilateral financial institution? We think that it's the infrastructure. I always give the example of the Second World War. After the Second World War, without the Marshall Plan, now Europe is not going to have 4 countries in the G7. We need a Marshall Plan for Africa. We need a similar thing for Southeast Asia. So we have to rewrite the way international cooperation works. We are trying to work in arena in trying to rewrite this rule. We have an investment forum in Nairobi. It was very successful. It's the first time in the last 3 years that I have the sense that we are really impacting there. I think that we have to start to work here or having something similar for Southeast Asia, perhaps next year at the SIEW.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of our panelists today. Can we have a round of applause for our panelists?
And thank you, Rachel, for moderating that very engaging discussion. Thank you very much. Do we have a group photograph organized? Yes, a quick group photograph with the cameraman in front. You may want to step forward a little. Yes, thanks. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we've come to the end of our morning session of the SIEW Summit. Now, I'm pleased to announce that the SIEW Energy Showcase, co-presented by the Energy Market Authority of Singapore and Sembcorp Industries, is now open. The SIEW Energy Showcase, just at the back of you, exhibits latest industry trends, clean energy solutions, and sustainable practices driving Singapore as well as Asia's net zero transitions. Now, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to invite all delegates to visit the showcase at the foyer just behind you. The SIEW Summit Networking Reception is on your right. It's on your right and will be held, the reception this evening, will be held at the Clifford Pier from 6 p.m. Shuttle services will be provided from right here at Marina Bay Sands by Sembcorp, and for you to hop on to Sembcorp's EV buses and travel with us carbon-free. Now, seats are limited on those buses, so it's on a first-come, first-served basis. Now, what's on your right is the lunch, of course, and this is will be just on the right. Make your way down to the right, and you'll be having a scrumptious lunch as you go through the foyer with the exhibits as well. Session 2 today, ladies and gentlemen, of the Singapore Energy Summit will commence just before 1 p.m. Keep that in mind, so we'd like for you to come in good time right here to the main ballroom just before 1 p.m. And of course, it will commence with a special address from the International Atomic Energy Agency. Do enjoy your lunch, not to forget the showcase, and bon appetit, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back.